Kevin Hart, girl, let's just start there because the way his name keeps coming up lately, it's not random. And honestly, the way Katt Williams has been talking about him, it's giving way deeper than just, oh, they don't like each other. So boom. Katt Williams has been saying for years that something about Kevin Hart's rise just never sat right with him. And not in a jealous way, but like confusion. Because according to Katt, nobody really remembers Kevin doing the grind the way comedians usually do. You know how most comedians talk about bombing on stage for years, doing tiny clubs, struggling, barely making rent? Katt is like, where is that part of Kevin's story? Because somehow Kevin Hart shows up in Los Angeles and suddenly, boom, big deals. A sitcom, movie roles, industry backing, opportunities people chase for 10, 15, 20 years just handed to him. And Katt's looking at that like, wait, how did we skip all the steps? And the way Katt explains it, it's not even about Kevin specifically. He's talking about a system. Like this idea that in Hollywood, some people don't rise, they're placed, chosen, positioned early by people behind the scenes who already decided, yeah, this one's going to be a star. And once you're in, you stay in as long as you play the game. Katt literally described it like a private club. Either you're in that circle or you're not. And if you're not willing to move a certain way, follow certain unspoken rules, then you stay outside looking in, period. And that's where his whole selling your soul talk came from. Not in a dramatic devil contract way, more like some people compromise. They say yes to things they normally wouldn't. They go along with stuff just to move ahead. And once they do, their career takes off. Meanwhile, the ones who say no, they stay stuck. And Katt has straight up said he believes Kevin Hart said yes. Now, whether you agree or not, the way Katt says it makes people pause. Because he's not just talking randomly. He points to Kevin's early career story and how it doesn't fully line up. Kevin talks about grinding on the East Coast, building his name there. But at the same time, he's already thriving in LA with major industry connections. So Katt's like, both of those things happening at once? It just doesn't add up. And then he brings up those moments actors get pushed into doing things they're not comfortable with, like wearing certain outfits, doing certain roles. And Kevin Hart did those roles. Katt basically said, some people refuse and get labeled difficult. Others go along and suddenly doors start opening. And let's not ignore how he specifically pointed out that pattern, especially with Black comedians being put in dresses for comedy. He wasn't subtle about it at all. He was like, why does it keep happening? Why is that always the move? And in his mind, it's not coincidence. It's part of the system. And here's where it gets even messier, because Dave Chappelle gets brought into the conversation too. Katt basically says people like Dave never played along, and look what happened. He stepped away. He got labeled difficult. He disappeared for a while. So Katt's like, yeah, there's a cost to saying no. Now enter Orlando Brown. And this is where people really started paying attention, because Orlando didn't just dismiss Katt. He actually backed him up. Orlando said he personally sat in Katt Williams' house, like face-to-face conversations, and heard Katt speak openly about what really goes on behind the scenes. And according to Orlando, Katt wasn't just ranting. He was calm, detailed, and very sure about what he was saying. And Orlando even mentioned that Katt has helped a lot of people in the industry quietly, like big help. No credit, no recognition. Just doing it because that's who he is. So in Orlando's mind, that makes Katt even more credible. Because why would someone like that just randomly lie? Then Orlando drops this line that really stuck with people. He basically says, when someone respected in the comedy world suddenly starts talking like this, you shouldn't just brush it off. You should ask what made them speak. And according to him, this isn't about one moment. This is about years of tension. Quiet issues, rivalries, stuff building up behind the scenes that the public never sees. And eventually, somebody breaks the silence. And Orlando straight up hinted that Kevin Hart might be that person Katt has an issue with. Not a group, not multiple people. One main person with a whole system behind him. And that's when things start to feel less like gossip and more like something bubbling under the surface that nobody fully understands yet. And see, once Orlando Brown really got into it, that's when the tone shifted from, okay, this is shade, to wait, what is actually going on here? Because Orlando didn't just agree with Katt Williams, he went further. He started implying that there are things happening in the comedy world that most people don't even realize exist. Not just competition, not just ego, but pressure, expectations, decisions that shape careers in ways the public never sees. And the way he described Kevin Hart, girl, not flattering at all. He basically said Kevin isn't this completely self-made lone wolf genius that people think. He said Kevin has teams, writers, people crafting his image. And while that's not shocking in Hollywood, the way Orlando said it felt like he was trying to strip away that authentic grind narrative Kevin built his brand on. And then he said something even crazier. He claimed Katt once told him exactly what Kevin allegedly did to get to where he is, like specific details. But Orlando stopped himself from saying everything publicly, which honestly makes it feel even more intense, because now it's like, what are you not saying? He kept hinting, like there's this whole other side of the industry that people only see if they're actually inside it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then comes that whole $50 million conversation. Now, this part had people really talking because Katt has said multiple times that he turned down huge money, like $50 million, because he didn't want to compromise his integrity. And Orlando basically flipped that and said, that might not just be about Katt being noble. He suggested it could have been a direct shot at Kevin Hart. Like Katt saying, I turned it down, while implying someone else took it. And Orlando connected that to the movie Get Hard with Will Ferrell, where Kevin Hart played a role that some people felt leaned into those same compromise for comedy conversations Katt was talking about. Now again, nothing is confirmed, but the implication that certain roles, certain choices are part of the deal. And then Orlando just goes completely off the rails with some of his metaphors, talking about dinosaurs, systems, hidden structures in the universe. But buried inside all that, there's a clear message. He believes there's a system in place that determines who becomes huge and who doesn't. And he's basically saying Kevin Hart benefited from that system. Now, whether you believe Orlando or not, he definitely added fuel to what Katt started. But here's where things get even messier, because it's not just comedians talking anymore. Other names start popping up, and suddenly the conversation expands beyond comedy into Hollywood in general. And that's when Gene Deal enters the chat. Now, Gene Deal is known for speaking on industry stuff, especially when it comes to behind-the-scenes parties and celebrity culture. And when Kevin Hart's name came up, even he seemed surprised but not completely dismissive. He mentioned hearing rumors again, rumors that Kevin might have been involved in certain private parties, the kind of parties that people always whisper about but never fully explain. The kind where things allegedly happen that don't match the clean public image celebrities have. And one specific story he brought up, something about Kevin being at a party with tubs of baby oil, wild situations, things getting out of control, and even Kevin almost falling into one of those setups. Now look, that sounds insane. And even the person he was talking to was like, wait, what? I've never heard that about Kevin. Because Kevin Hart has always had that safe, family-friendly, funny guy image. But Gene Deal's whole point was, a lot of people who end up in those environments didn't go there planning to do anything crazy. He said sometimes there's alcohol, substances, pressure, and suddenly people are in situations they never imagined. And he made it clear this isn't just about Kevin. He said this kind of stuff has been happening in the industry for decades. Music, movies, entertainment, all of it. So now you've got Katt talking about a system, Orlando backing him up with personal experiences, and Gene Deal hinting at a darker environment behind the scenes. And then people started looking back at Kevin Hart himself. Because for years, Kevin was seen as the clean one, the hardworking, funny, drama-free guy, the safe face of comedy. But once all these conversations started, people began revisiting his past and noticing things they didn't pay attention to before. Like the 2017 scandal, Kevin posted that video himself, remember? Looking serious, admitting he made a mistake, saying he put himself in a bad situation that hurt his wife, Aniko Parrish, who was pregnant at the time. And the way he said it, very controlled, very careful. He admitted fault, but didn't go into too much detail. Then it comes out there was a video. Someone had secretly recorded him with another woman in a hotel room and tried to extort him. And instead of letting it come out on someone else's terms, Kevin got ahead of it and confessed publicly. And that's when Mantia Sabag speaks up. She says she wasn't part of any setup. She didn't record anything. She claims she was a victim too because someone planted cameras without her knowing. And now, suddenly, she's caught in the middle of this whole scandal. Then authorities get involved, and Kevin's former friend, Jonathan Todd Jackson, gets accused of trying to extort him. So now the story flips. It's not just cheating, it's betrayal, blackmail, secret recordings. And when people looked back at Kevin's earlier interviews, it got even more interesting because he had literally said before all this happened that in today's world, you can't hide anything. That one mistake can ruin everything. And people were like, wait, that sounds like he knew exactly how risky his situation was. And suddenly, the image of Kevin Hart being this perfect, untouchable guy, it started cracking just a little bit more. And once that image starts cracking, it's like people can't stop digging. Because now it's not just about one scandal. It's like everything connected to Kevin Hart starts getting re-examined all over again. And one of the biggest things people went back to, his relationship timeline, because for years, Kevin and Aniko Parrish were presented as this solid couple. Clean, happy, no drama. But then people started doing the math, and the math wasn't mathing. You've got Teray Hart, Kevin's first wife, who was there from the very beginning. She's the one who supported him when he was still trying to figure things out. Small shows, low money, real grind. She said herself she was there when he was making barely anything, helping him rehearse, pushing him forward. So when Aniko once posted that she had been with Kevin for 8 years, people immediately noticed something off. Because Kevin and Teray's divorce timeline didn't line up with that. And Teray didn't stay quiet about it either. She basically came out like, listen, numbers don't lie. She didn't scream. She didn't make a scene. But the way she said it, it hit harder. Because she was calm. She was like, my kids can read. They can see timelines. I'm not about to look like I'm lying. And that's when people started realizing there may have been overlap. Not officially confirmed, but heavily implied. And then it gets even deeper because Kevin himself admitted in his own book that cheating wasn't just a one-time mistake. He talked about living a double life, being one person publicly and doing completely different things privately. He said arguments in his first marriage would get intense, and instead of fixing things, both sides would sometimes step outside the relationship. And even after getting married, he kept making bad choices. At one point, it got so messy that another woman exposed everything. And that's what really pushed the marriage to collapse. There's even a moment he described where Teray caught him with someone else, like face to face, no hiding, and it turned into one of the lowest points of his life. Now imagine that, and then fast forward to the image Kevin built later, the motivational speaker, the disciplined guy, the rise and grind king. It makes people wonder how much of that image is real and how much is curated. And Teray, honestly, she handled it in a way that made people respect her even more. She didn't sit there bitter or chasing drama. When people asked her about Kevin showing off, spending money, being flashy with his new life, she was just like, that's his money. I don't react to what he does. That calm energy, It's said a lot without saying too much. But while all of this is happening, past relationships, scandals, rumors, you've still got that bigger conversation floating over everything. The one Katt Williams started, because now it's not just about Kevin's personal life, it's about his entire rise. Katt's whole point was never just Kevin did this or Kevin did that. It was Kevin represents something bigger, a system, a pattern. And whether people agree or not, you can't deny this. Kevin Hart became one of the biggest comedians in the world in a very short time. Movies, endorsements, stadium tours, global brand. That level of success doesn't happen often, and when it does, people always start asking questions. Was it just talent and hard work? Was it timing? Or was there something else helping push things forward? And that's where the divide comes in. Some people look at Kevin and see pure hustle. A guy who worked nonstop, stayed consistent, built his brand smartly, and took every opportunity that came his way. And honestly, that's a fair argument because Kevin does work hard. Nobody denies that. But then you've got people who listen to Katt Williams, Orlando Brown, even bits of what Gene Deal hinted at, and they're like, nah, there's more to this story. And the truth is, we may never get full confirmation either way because Hollywood doesn't really work like that. The deeper stuff, if it exists, stays behind closed doors. People hint, people talk, people throw pieces out, but the full picture rarely comes out clean. So what you're left with is this layered story. On the surface, Kevin Hart is the funny, successful, unstoppable comedian who built an empire. Underneath that, there are scandals, messy relationships, mistakes he admitted to himself, and even deeper than that, there are whispers, allegations. The idea that maybe, just maybe, success at that level comes with things most people wouldn't even understand. Now, whether you believe Katt Williams or not, one thing is clear. When someone that respected keeps speaking this loudly for this long, people are going to keep listening. And Kevin Hart, his name isn't leaving that conversation anytime soon.